We have to expect the unexpected. And really, when you expect it, is it really that unexpected? I mean, come on. We wake up every day of our lives and we know there are events that are not probable today, and yet over an extended period of time, they're quite probable in our future. You know, I think we have to talk about things like 08 and 09 and recognize that in that Great Recession, when we talk about a pandemic, when we talk about the attacks of 9/11, you know, when we talk about some of the things that have happened in the world, we hope that they never happen and nothing that even resembles them ever happens again. But for most of us, that's probably not the case. We're going to have other things that exist in our lives that we have to deal with, either physically or emotionally. Today, we're going to talk about natural disasters and how you prepare for them financially long before they ever occur. Join us on Consider This Program today. Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This Program. I am your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Grant Soliven.
What keeps you up at night, Grant? And don't tell me that you ran out of food.
Well, that's it.
We kid each other about this, by the way. If you're not watching this on video, you know, you ought to, because it's kind of a lot of fun. You know, they told me, they said, Joe, you really need to put it on video. So now we have YouTube channels where we talk about this stuff, and you can see Grant and I, or Aaron, or Darren, or whoever it is on the team that happens to be in video, and join us. But you know, Grant and I are we're not the tallest people in the firm. But
we aren't the smallest either.
But we're not the smallest either. You know, that works out pretty well. Anyhow, what keeps you up at night? Seriously.
So honestly, financial freedom, if we're getting into the root of it, and honestly, health in a lot of ways. And sometimes I've already lived through in my current home 2 natural disasters. So I've had 2 trees fall on my home. I had my roof replaced in 20 and this year.
I didn't know about 20. I knew about, or at least I forgot about it, or I thought it was the same story continued.
It's what it felt like.
Yeah, no, I bet. So there are natural disasters that are physical, right? We live in Indiana. If you're listening, we have people in 31 states that listen to this that we take care of, and a few people that are overseas that watch the show. Bottom line is, we live in the world of tornadoes. You know, if you think about the Wizard of Oz, you hear about Kansas. Kansas does have more tornadoes every year than any other state, or at least they did the last time I saw the numbers. More people die in Indiana than in other states, and it's, you know, we have a lot of mobile home parks. I lived in one of those for when Barb and I first got married, and you know, tornadoes come out of nowhere, and they still give us that fear. We don't have a lot of hurricanes in Indiana. Lake
Thank
Michigan
goodness.
has not stormed the Indianapolis metropolitan area here for a while. We have had earthquakes.
Yes, we have.
I have felt them. My wife told me to go back to bed. I was dreaming, and then my brother called, 40 miles away, and go, "Did you feel that?" And the answer is yes, right? So those are natural disasters. But Grant, there's also emotional disasters. And, I don't think there's anything we can talk about in 2020 that wasn't more of a natural or emotional disaster than that. People being locked up at homes, having loved one dies. My daughter's in ICU, and we're not allowed to go to the hospital. That's the things that some of you had to go through were just amazing and traumatic. Amazing, obviously not in a good sense.
Right.
So, there's emotional and there's physical, and either way, you have to be able to be a good Boy Scout.
Absolutely.
You have to be prepared,
100%.
right? Know what's going on and be ready to go. So one of the things that you told me that you feel is important with the tree falling that you lived through and COVID that you lived through, you got COVID worse than most people. You put down that it's important to talk to your family. So why don't you walk me through that and tell me where you're heading?
100%. So when it comes to especially specifically the emotional side, it's hard for families to look at a sheet of paper, Joe, and know the emotional attachment to your wishes. And so it's taboo to talk about our money and how we transition. Did I want to have a conversation with my wife when I was not able to breathe with COVID about where life insurance policies were, who she contacted if I didn't wake up, all of those things? No, I did it through tears and fear, but I had to have the conversation with her before I went to the hospital. And the other key is, too, as you're laying out your final wishes, we never know when we're getting called home, right? That's one of the weird, some people even call it a miracle of life, is you don't know your end date. And so having conversations ahead of time about how you prepare. And here's the thing, going back to natural disasters, How do you have a game plan with family on where you go to if your house is knocked out by a tornado? Who you calling first, right? How do you find your pets? So these are all things that we don't think about until it's almost too late.
And the interesting part is you at this point in time have no children.
Correct.
Right. So some of those things are the late night when somebody's becoming a parent for the first time, and you get these calls at 10 o'clock at night, which I have had, and is it time? Are you going to the hospital? I mean, no. What happens over these kind of questions? They realize they're going to be a parent, and now they're trying to prepare at the last minute. So we are checklist driven nuts. And those are the kind of conversations and things that you really, really need to have to be able to communicate with people. And I, when you think about what keeps you up at night, the answer to that, whether it's emotional or whether it's physical, really is stress. Right? Something is stressing your heart or your mind or your body, and your blood rate, your heart rate's elevated, and you're just not getting any sleep. Preparation really does eliminate some of that stress, eliminate some of the unknown. So people talk to us about the retirement practice year without understanding why we walk through that, but it really is to relieve some of that stress. So why don't you explain what the retirement practice year is and how we use it?
Absolutely. One of the key elements in the retirement practice year, you've heard us talk about this and labor this on many shows and other programs like Elements and Focus, and that is we look at your standard of living. So what is it that you're trying to accomplish from an income perspective, right? Because everyone wants to talk about income and their assets, so we get that out of the way so we understand how income is going to be taken care of. The industry tells us academically we have to replace 70% of income on a tax return. We both know that's standard of living 100%, not income. And then another part of retirement practice here is, are all of your estate documents up to par? Are all your beneficiaries correct? Are you entering retirement knowing you have a good plan in place and knowing the key players in that plan for you going forward?
So as we look at this, and I don't want to think about bad things happening to any family, to my family. I don't want to think about bad things happening to our economy. But our job is to take care of the things that are out there. And so a great quotation or thought from Andy Stanley, though I did hear another podcast where somebody else used this that happens to be Andy's friend, and they kind of fessed up that they don't know who used it from who. So it may have actually been something that came out of Home Depot. Regardless, the point is the same. Based on your previous experiences, your current hopes and dreams, what would be wise for you to do today knowing your present situation? So what we have today, we have our health or we don't have our health. We have money or we don't have money, right? We have an economy, we have a market, but based on where we are right now and based on what we have learned from our past and based on where we want to go in the future, what would be wise for us? What's the most intelligent decision to be able to make, right? So I love Six Sigma. For those of you that are engineers, you'll know what that is. And I'm a golfer. And the way that my friends that listen to this program that are engineers taught me how to understand Six Sigma was through a book called Wisdom on the Green, written by an attorney in Indianapolis and another one in Texas. And it talked about how a hacker, that would be a bad golfer, that's me, looks at a green, looks at the flag, and tends to aim the ball at the flag without noticing the sand trap just to the left or right in front of it, where undoubtedly we're going to have a mistake, that's going to cost multiple strokes for our air. The wisdom on the green, or the part of it, says, okay, we know that the variability of my shot, may be 10 yards at this point in time from where I am, where a pro's may be 10 feet. Right? So they're going to be able to aim a lot closer to the flag. I'm going to have to go away from all of the ugliness and know that I'm not going to have a great Sunday afternoon golf shot winning the Masters. But I'm going to save myself from getting a double or a triple bogey, right? And that's really what we're saying to you. There's so many things in life that you can do as opposed to sit down with your wife and talk about, or a husband, and talk about, what do we do if this happens, right? Because nobody wants to focus on the negative, especially when everything looks like it's going well. What do we do if this happens? Well, I'll tell you, when you're having a great day or when you're financially successful, there is no better time to talk about bad stuff than when things are good. Because the last thing you want to talk about is bad stuff when things are bad.
True.
Right? You're not going to get, your emotions when that tree fell in your house for the second time were probably not the best.
Especially after coming right out of the hospital.
Yeah. They're probably not the best time to, here's a great idea. Let's sit down, ignore the tree and the rain, and, let's just have the conversation about what we would do the next time the tree fell, right?
Right.
That is just not what happens,
No.
right? In terms of this. So, we've talked about having the plan to be able to put together, communicating with our kids, communicating with our spouses over things that we don't really want to talk about that we need to have. And you don't have to do it all at once, but,
No.
baby steps are better than no steps, right? That old expression, a lot of you've heard, if it's worth doing right. Loved my grandpa. He tried to teach me that. It was years later when somebody looked at me and goes, no, Joe, if it's worth doing poorly until you can do it well. We have a tendency of not doing things until we can do it perfect the first time. Do not get caught up in it. You will not get it done perfectly. Right? Preparing for disaster is not easy. I love the Giuliani talk. I know he's given it 1,000 times. I don't care. It's still worthwhile. They were not prepared for 9/11 because they knew that the trade centers would fall. They were prepared for 9/11 because they had detailed plans what to do when the harbor got bombed, detailed plans about what to do with Grand Central Station, detailed plans to do with what happens if the trade centers got hit again like they did in the 90s. Not expecting them to fall down. But they were able to take all of that pre-planning, put it together, and coordinate an effort where good things happened. Where the best could happen, I should say. Certainly not good things, but where the best could have possibly happened. That's really all Grant and I are trying to tell you with this, right? Figure out where you are right now and start to come up with battle plans, both emotionally and if there were to be a storm. Where do we have access to capital? Where's the important paperwork? Have we taken the pictures? That's one of the things you need to do with the stuff in your house is take pictures of all of the items, right? The insurance companies trust you. They believe you, but they're Reagan-esque, right? Trust but verify. If everything you have is the most expensive thing you could buy, that does get questioned. So take pictures of art and collectibles and things like that and store it somewhere else. Just basic little checklist stuff. And so one of the things that we'll do is offer you a checklist. Grant will assign it to somebody in the planning team, but let's just build a checklist to bulletproof your house from a natural storm. The psychological storms are a little bit different, but we'll give you things on there that you're going to want to consider. A lot of that comes from our insurance agents, and in my case, 33 years of watching bad things happen to an awful lot of people. Good people just like you, where you don't plan for something bad to happen. It just happens. So let's plan ahead and be ready to go. Hey, go to yourlifeafterwork.com. Get signed up for a Next Steps meeting. We look forward to meeting you. 800-928-4001.